demography of the class. Pretty much I don't have everybody from last week here. And I'm pretty much sure I didn't have John last week. So I want to do a little bit of just recap of what we did last week. Just basically the basics. So I might spin up the one we did last week just to the one Dominic treated last week, just to show it up, and we can go from here. Is that good? Um, is that good? So we can just give it from now till like 6:40 Nigerian time for that one. Then we can start for the class we have today, if that's okay with everybody. Is that okay? Or we
That's
should move
fine.
forward. John, of course, you said that's fine. You were not here last week.
I
um,
actually had a recorded session, have gone
I
through it. So
oh, Regina, what do you think? Sorry, you said something.
I
You want to
also
say
wasn't
something?
here last week. This is my first time, so I would love a
Oh,
recap.
okay. All right. Helen, what do you think? Go yes
Yes,
or
I
nah?
wasn't here last week,
Oh,
so I will not
okay.
that.
I'm pretty sure Win is here last week. Win, you cannot deny that one. So
Yeah, I think it will also be nice to have a short recap.
recap. Okay. All right then. 1 second. Let me just bring it up and yeah. Okay. All right. So last week we looked at something. We basically call it this is what we call like Cloud 101, right? Doesn't matter whether it's Azure or GCP or AWS. This is Cloud 101. Everything about cloud based on on this fundamentals, right? What are the fundamentals? The fundamentals is okay. Hey, why are we even going to the cloud? What's the need? Why will my company want to go to the cloud? Why do we want to go to the cloud? What are the terminologies, right? So, going quickly with this recap. Sorry, 1 second. I forgot to plug my laptop, which is fun. Yeah, okay. So if we look at the learning outline, so basically this is what we shared last week, talking about the cloud computing. What is cloud computing? What is shared responsibility model? What is shared responsibility model? What is cloud models? What is capital and all? What's in costing? We'll talk about the cloud benefits. We'll talk about cloud service types, the IaaS, the PaaS, the SaaS. I remember then just short of 8 years ago, when TechExpert came to Nigeria, I happened to be the first SME. This one of the critical questions I used to ask people, right? So I know you are not coming because then the cloud was in Nigeria, but the cloud was still very, very much new, right? Can say they're very much new. But I always say, okay, what idea do you have about the cloud? What do you even know the cloud does, right? So just to kickstart this, what is cloud computing? Very simple summary. Cloud computing is just renting a computer in the cloud. Was it? No. So what are you saying? Don't confuse us. Okay. Summary. So what cloud computing is all about? Renting compute services. So for example, now think of it like this. Now, most of us use iPhone. Let me just say most of us. Some of us use iPhone. Some of us use Gmail. Right. Some of us use Gmail, and Gmail say, hey, you're giving 15 terabytes, 15 gigabyte. Right. If you need more, you can pay for more. Right. Go one. Some of us use Apple iPhone. So you bought iPhone of 56 gig. Apple gives you this cloud drive of extra 10 gig or extra 50 gig, depending on what you pay per month. If you want 200 gig, you basically pay, I think, around €3 or 10,000 naira. Just summarize like that, right? So what are they? It's not as if Apple is giving you physical storage. So basically, what you're doing is every month you're saying, Apple, hey, I'm renting this storage for this amount. The whole kind of cloud computing is about, hey, I want to rent cloud services. So this cloud services could be computing is a computer, that's CPU, right? Cloud services could be memory. Memory could be RAM, right? RAM. It could be storage. That's what cloud computing is all about, right? So whether you are going to in all sense, it's all about saying, I don't own this. I only rent this. So in summary, in their big grammar say, hey, delivery of computing services over the internet, right? Enabling faster innovation, flexible resources, economics of scale. Forget all this grammar. It's all about renting, right? It's like my Airbnb. I come into a new town. I come into France now. Hey, I don't want to buy a house. I don't want to. I want just I need a place to sleep and a place to rest my head. I rent a room, right? I rent a hotel. Just stay there for a period of 1 month. or 2 weeks or a day, and I leave. So imagine if any day you go, any country you go into, for you to get a place to sleep, you have to buy it. Long time ago, that is what computing is all about. Oh, I'm coming into a new I'm coming into a new, I'm trying to try a new business. Now my business might be offering email services, it might be offering financial services. I don't even know whether this business will work. I don't know whether we are going to make money. Before investor 101 comes in, because before investor zero comes in, you have to buy compute resources, because how are you going to host it, right? Where are you going to keep your resources? You don't know whether you're going to make money. On the olden days, that's what it's all about. Not saying olden days, this 10 years ago, right? I witnessed it, right? Before you even start, you have to rent you have to buy. You have to buy services. You have to buy a server. You have to buy a server. You have to pay someone to configure it. You have to buy switches, buy routers. You have to buy all these things. But now you don't have to buy. You can actually rent. And that process of renting is cloud services. The fact you are renting it over the internet, you don't even know what the the server looks like. You don't know what the memory looks like. You don't know what the networking looks like. It's cloud, right? Flexible. With your credit card, debit card, you can rent the services. Simple. Next thing, private cloud. You say, no, so don't enter on that one. What does it mean by private cloud? Private cloud is mean, I'm a big company, I'm a big organization. I have the money to do it, right? I want to have this cloud, but I want it to be only for me. I don't want to share it with anybody. I don't want to share it with Regina. I'm not sharing with Helen. Lizzie, keep your money. John, I know you're a big boy. Keep your money. I don't want to share. This is for me in my house. What do I do? I build a data center. I make the percent. This is only for Nonso and his businesses. That's why when it's private, right? When it's private. The next one, of course, anything that is private, there is a public, right? So this guy is rushing to, okay, the next one is public. Public saying, hey, Nonso is now as big as Microsoft. Nonso is saying, okay, I want to share, I want to sell people some of these computes. One of my business model, because that is what that's how the cloud actually came to be, right? The whole public cloud, that's how it came to be. There has always been private cloud, not called cloud, but there's always been private cloud, right? I remember some back as 2011, 2012, I was working with UBA. We had a private cloud, right? We have a petabyte of data that manage the whole banking infrastructure. It's private cloud. Nothing like public cloud. Public cloud, I think, is just coming up there. How does it come to like AWS, Amazon? What they do? They build their own cloud system that is helping them to service Amazon, right? After a while, Jeff Bezos now say, nah, man, the woman in him say, I can make money from this. So we may sell these services. So many companies, imagine then, if you're a small business, you want to start up a small business, right? What do you do? How many of us used to go to CyberCaf? Sorry, I'm old, right? You go to CyberCaf. What do you see? There's always a system engineer. Oh, my system is hanging. Somebody runs, right? Small businesses have to think about this. They have to think about who manages their system, who manages their network, manages their router. Of course, it meant more jobs, but it also means that as a small company, you cannot scale. Right? The public cloud is all about, hey, AWS thought about, Amazon thought about it. Hey, okay, this thing we are doing that is working so well for us, we are using it to manage Amazon. Can we sell it to the general public, right? That's where they started. That's what class thought about. So when I think about public cloud, I think about, hey, I have my debit card like this. I'm saying, okay, I need to get services. I need to get compute. So it's about to start Nonso and Sons Limited, right? The way my people always do, Nonso and Sons Limited, International Limited, right? What do I do? Do I have to go and buy computer and go buy servers? No, I want to rent it for 1 month. I want to rent it for 1 week. I want to rent it for 1 year. I'm still building my what we call MVP, my minimum viable product, right? What do? I need to build this out. So let me even get something sample to test it. I'm a developer. I'm not so good in programming. I'm not so good in infrastructure. I just need a place to host my application. So the public cloud comes about. So what do? You go there, go to Microsoft, go public AWS cloud, Google Cloud, Amazon, Azure Cloud, GCP Cloud. I mentioned Google Cloud already. You go to any of them and basically you rent your cloud. That is, you rent your compute services. That's it. Very simple. It's public cloud. Then there is the thing. So these are like we used to call this. These are for people that make soup. Those people that they will not like eating one soup. They will add a gusi. They will add a wedu behind. That's what the hybrid cloud is all about. The hybrid cloud is saying, okay, I'm a big company. I have my own on-premise. I have my own private cloud. But there are some things in this public cloud that I would like to use it. I don't have the time to start building it. Okay, I want to make a mixture of both my on-prem, my private cloud, and the public. So that's why you start using the two, right? That's what the public cloud is all about. So you see, that's what the hybrid cloud is all about. So whenever if it's all private, that means it's all internal, all by your tools, maintained by your team, is public, is private. When you have to go over the internet, you purchase the services, you rent it, you use it, you manage it, it's hybrid. When you have to mix the two, right? You test this one for some of your services, you host it here, for some of your services, you host it there. That's when it becomes hybrid cloud, right? Any questions?
Let me just chip into what you said. In other words, hybrid cloud, your private cloud is your building your own infrastructure by yourself. You have to, you are in charge of everything. You are going to manage everything that has to do with the power, electric, which is electrical costs. You are going to be in charge of the physical machines. You are going to employ engineers. You are going to buy cooling fan, because once you put in servers, you have a server farm, for example, you are going to bring in your cooling fan to be managed. You need to put in somebody to secure all of that for you. That's that about your own private cloud. Your public cloud is the Azure, AWS, and the GCP, which is the public cloud. And your hybrid cloud is mixing both your private cloud and your public cloud together. It becomes a hybrid cloud. So I think that's just a short term for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Dominic. All right. So moving freely, comparison. I think I've already explained this, right? So public cloud, private cloud, which one? What Dominic basically said is similar. Hey, you need to bring out money before you start. You need to buy the servers ahead of time. That's public. Private, that's private. Public, you can rent, even if it's 1 gig RAM, 1 gig CPU, rent it and test out, right? Hybrid, provide most of it. In some things, I want to buy it up front. In some things, I want to, right? The people that like to test two soup at the same time. That's hybrid, right? Moving forward. Another thing I want to talk about that is very important when you're moving between hybrid and between public and private cloud is CapEx and OpEx. What is CapEx? Capital expenditure. OpEx, operational expenditure. So for capital expenditure for private cloud, it requires you to make huge investments upfront. So for example, now, if I'm a bank now, I'm a bank, so CBN just gave me license for a bank now. So I'm talking from as if you're in Nigeria, CBN just gave you license now. You don't even know whether you meet all the requirements by the end of the year. Then if you are going by private cloud, which is CapEx, you need to go and buy your infrastructure upfront. You require huge investments. You do your investment upfront, right? So that means you have to dump in a lot of money for something that you are not even sure. So you're not even sure. But the benefit is that you own the hardware, right? If at the end of 1 year, business no go, you can sell the hardware in quotes, right? The other one, your OpEx is basically saying, hey, okay, I see they go. No need of me dumping my money. No need of me dumping big money. I can be spending as we are scaling. But right now, as a bank, we have just 100 customers. Then we probably need just a 16 gig server, a 16 gig memory server with 8 CPUs. Tomorrow, we have moved to 1,000. I can scale to 32 gig. So I can go bit by bit. Instead of buying 32 gig at the beginning and not being sure whether our business is going to scale. It's OpEx. So one is more linked with private. One is more linked with public, right? Moving forward, cloud benefits. What are the benefits of cloud? They say high availability, scalability, predictability, governance, manageability, security, reliability, elasticity. Of course, all these things are just good news. What are they saying? They're basically saying the cloud is very, very. These are the benefits of using cloud. Saying these are the benefits of using cloud, that in such that if you're using cloud, a cloud is only highly available. You can predict what is happening in the cloud, right? You can scale. Today you started with 2 gig RAM, you can scale to 12 gig RAM, to 20 gig RAM, to 24 gig RAM, you can scale. It can easily be managed. Yeah, so high security. We're going to talk about the security, the SaaS model, how the security all works in the cloud, how it's different to how it's different depends on what you choose, but that's one part of the benefits. Cloud service type. That's another one. Very, very important. IaaS. So this is just terms. So these terms are very important because as time goes on, you are expected to kind of understand these basics. So if you see a cloud resource, I say cloud resource, for example, when we create a VM, when we create an app service, when I show you an app service, you'll be able to tell me, no, so this is an IaaS, this is a PaaS, this is a SaaS. What is an IaaS? An IaaS, the term say is a short form for say infrastructure as a service. So what does it mean? Your infrastructure is you're offering your infrastructure as a service. So like this now, I came like this. I said, okay, hey, I need a VMO. Dominic, yeah, I'm building a business. So what's that business? No, so and sons is trying to grow. We're trying to grow. I'm trying to start up a business. I need a server that I can host my application. My application. What do? I will go. I rent a server. If I rent a server, if it's a server, that means I decide to, okay, this server will be running on Linux or Windows OS. I'm in charge of installing what I want to run on that server. For example, I might say I want to install what's that word? I might say I want to install let me say Windows Server for mailing service. I want to install Apache. I want to install any Nginx. I want to install Docker. I want to manage all this locally. So I want to manage all those things locally. I want to install it likely. I want to be hands-on, right? I'm likely going to lean towards IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So what is it all about? You build pay-as-you-go infrastructure by renting servers, virtual machines, storage, networks, and operating system from a cloud provider. See, not that word, cloud provider. That means Azure offers IaaS. GCP offers IaaS. Our beautiful friend AWS offers IaaS. Most cloud providers offers infrastructure as a service. So IaaS is not just related to Azure; it's a general term to when you are renting servers. The next one is what? Platform as a service PaaS. So if you are looking at this arrow, you're saying that this arrow get as view. What is it mentioned about? We're going to talk about the shared responsibility model. But in the meantime, let's talk about PaaS. What is PaaS? PaaS is saying, hey, I'm like John. I don't want Wahala. What I want is basically I want to deploy. I'm a developer. I'm not like Nonso that wants to format this, set up hardware, put into this one, set up file share. I need a place to host my beautiful application. All right. My beautiful AI application. I'm an AI engineer. I'm writing AI. I'm building models. I don't need to be worrying about how to install. What I need is a place to host my web application, my front-end application. So what I need, I'm for platform of a service. So platform as a service, there are limits to what you can do. You just choose whether you want IaaS. So you choose whether you want a Linux or Windows, but you don't choose. You can choose the platform, but you don't get to worry about updates. Most of us have a phone, right? Whereby suddenly they say, "Hey, update your phone," right? In IaaS, you're expected to update. You are expected to install updates. The same way you update our laptops, you're expected to install updates. It's up to you to install updates. It's up to you to restart and install updates. In PaaS, there's nothing like that. In PaaS, there's nothing like that. In PaaS, literally, your services, all those updates are being managed by Microsoft. The last one, go, is SaaS. SaaS is software as a service. This one is that you are a consumer, right? You don't, for example, think about it now. Let me use ChatGPT in OpenAI, for example, now. Let's say I'm a company, I want to use OpenAI to build my application, right? I'm not going to start training OpenAI model, training GPT. I'm just going to say, hey, OpenAI is a SaaS service. Just give me a model, let me use to build my application. And nothing to host it to. Don't think about our Gmail. How many of us have bothered whether Gmail is running on Windows or Linux? How many of us have bothered which operating system, which operating system, Gmail is running on? None, right? No. We don't even know. All we know that hey, you open our phone, you open Gmail, and we use our Gmails. That's all. That's what software as a service. Here you're a consumer, right? I gave an example about egusi soup last week, but I guess that my example, if you didn't like it. See, to bring that example again, I say, hey, software as IaaS in terms of cooking egusi soup is when you go to the market, you buy egusi, you buy egusi, you come home, you buy your pounded yam, like my people used to eat. You start doing your pounded yam, you start grinding your egusi, you cook your egusi, you eat. After you eat finish, you wash your blender, you wash your pot, you wash your plate, you wash your sink. Everything is on you, right? It's IaaS. So there is more work for you to do in IaaS. That's why the fact you're not the one that, remember, you're not the one that grew the egusi. You're not the one that planted the cassava. You just bought it, right? You bought it and you prepared it to your satisfaction and you ate it. In platform as a service, you ordered it. You use Uber Eats. On the day the hungry meal, you carry your phone, you ordered Uber Eats. They deliver it to your house. Okay, because you are not a good chef. You are not a good cook. You're not a good chef, but you know how to consume. You're a consumer like me. Once they send it, you bring out your plate, you balance, you're dining, you devour it. But after, of course, you have to wash your hand, you have to wash the plates because you are consuming those ones. It's on you, right? You are the one to wash your plate. You're the one to clean up your dining. You're the one to set up your chair. You're the one to set up your table. It's on you. That's PaaS. The last one is SaaS. I say SaaS is basically, hey, I like enjoyment. I'm going to the restaurant. What is the best African restaurant around? I walk into that restaurant, I sit down, I relax. I say, okay, hi, give me pounded yam. Sure, give me 4 wraps of pounded yam. Give me egusi. I don't care whether the egusi was prepared with a gold spoon or with a rubber spoon. I don't care. I don't care what's happened to the plate after I eat it. I don't care. They bring the egusi. I sit down there. I devour it. I clean my hands. I stand up. I go. I pay for that service. I don't care whether the egusi was made in Nigeria or whether it's made for Ghana. I don't care whether it's Ghana egusi or Nigeria egusi. I just consume, I eat, I get comfortable, and I go. So there is a level of control on each and every one of them, right? Please, guys, any question? No questions. Okay, thank you. A last step I will talk before I move on to the class for today, profit class today, is the shared responsibility model. This is very important because this is saying, hey, it's all about, it's cloud. Cloud is very good, cloud very beautiful, but what are you responsible for? There are some things that you are responsible for, right? For example, now, if you put your password as password 123 and someone hacks your Gmail, you didn't enable two-factor, are you going to blame Google? Of course, you are responsible for making sure that you enable two-factor authentication. The password is complex password. Of course, you're responsible for some of them, right? That is what the shared responsible model is all about. What are you responsible for? For the on-premise, which is your private cloud, you are responsible for everything. The information, the devices, the accounts and identities, the identity and directory infrastructure, the applications, the network controls, the operating system, the physical host, the networking hardware, physical network, the data centers. It's your responsibility, right? The next one is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. That's when the cloud is coming in, right? And that's when you rent your server, you rent your network. They're saying, hey, okay, in that case, the physical host, like the hardware, if someone should come and plug in USB drive inside there, it's not your responsibility. It's our responsibility to protect that, to protect the data center. It's our responsibility to protect the network. It's our responsibility to protect the data center. So Microsoft will have probably armed security man protecting their data centers all over the world. I don't know where the data center is. It's not my responsibility. It's Microsoft's responsibility. But beyond that, updating your operating system, control whether you enable this port to be open under the internet, whether you block it, whether you decide whether the application has vulnerability or not, whether you decide who have access or not. Those responsibilities are on you. So for IaaS, there are some responsibility that are Microsoft. There are some that are solely your responsibility. Moving out from that, for PaaS, you see, for PaaS, everything IaaS has as Microsoft's responsibility is still Microsoft's responsibility. Plus one more, the operating system. The OS is now Microsoft's responsibility. So, for example, if there's a vulnerability in Ubuntu OS or in Windows OS now, it's not your responsibility to patch it, it's Microsoft's responsibility to patch it. It's that one. So for network control, Microsoft is saying, for network control, some part of it, not Microsoft, all cloud providers, some part of it is your responsibility. Some part of it is my responsibility, right? If your application needs to talk to port 80, but port 80 is not a secure port, and you decide, you insist, this application must talk to port 80, because saying, oh, okay, you have the responsibility to use secure port, but you decide to use unsecure port, it's your responsibility, right? Application, if you write an application that has vulnerability, right? This is your application is open to SQL injection. People can scan your application to update the secrets. You're not using the highest standard to protect your application. Of course, Microsoft is saying that it's your responsibility. We cannot handle that. It's your responsibility. Directory infrastructure identity, the passwords, whether you use OAuth, whether you use the right size standard, it's your responsibility. So if it's not your responsibility, it's part of Microsoft's responsibility. When we move to SaaS, Microsoft is saying, for SaaS, everything, even up to applications, is our responsibility. Beyond that, when it comes to the identity and directory infrastructure, some part is our responsibility, some part is your responsibility. So why are they saying this? You say, Microsoft, that one not be true. Of course, if you use identities that I have mentioned here, your password are easy to crack. Your password are not secure enough, right? You gave somebody else your password. Somebody is handling your two, or same way, if you gave somebody else your card and your PIN, and your money gets debited to your account, you cannot blame the bank for that, of course, because you gave the authorization for that to happen. Counter identities, same thing. Devices, mobile and PC. If your device is not secure, for example, we'll make sure that whenever iOS or Google prompts us, hey, update our laptops, update our phones, we go ahead to update it, because if you don't update it, it's a possibility that your device will be vulnerable for attacks. So from there, that's why the fact that it's a SaaS service, of course, someone can attack you from there. That is not Microsoft's responsibility. Think of it like this now. You go to that fancy restaurant to eat your egusi, and they give you egusi. Instead of you to put it into your mouth, you put it inside your nose, right? Or you put it inside your eye. It's not the restaurant's responsibility, it's your responsibility, right? Same with information and data, whether it's secured, what you put in there, how you secure it. If you follow all their standards, it's now your ability to make sure what you put in there, right? For example, now my emails, if I ensure that the standards are there, then I'm meeting all their responsibilities. That is where I will stop for all the things we did, the cap of what we did last week. So I have to ask any questions, anything I missed? Was I too fast? Anything you don't understand, anything you say, no, so this one, explain very well. Or anything you would like me to explain again? Okay. All right. Moving forward to what we have today. Okay, Adiola has a question. Go ahead, Adiola.
Sorry,
Adiola, we can.
A quick recap here. A quick recap here. I would share the link for the recorded session for last week, and so that you guys can take your time and go to watch it. And then if you have any question that you are not sure of, or you are getting a bit confused, you need like a layman understanding or a novice understanding, please feel free, draft your question while the class is going on, and while the session is going on rather, and we will single-handedly come back to your questions, and then give you answers to that. I think that would help further. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Adiola, you raised your hand for a question. No question. Okay. All right. Moving forward. Today we're going to look more. I know I started this last week, but I'm going to go deeper into it. We're going to look more into Azure architecture and services. So the first part is talking about cloud in general, not just Microsoft Azure. Now we're going to look at about how Azure behaves, right? Azure architecture and services, right? Moving forward, what are we going to today? Azure architecture components, region, availability zone, subscriptions, resource groups, compute types, application hosting, virtual networking, storage services, redundancy options, file management, migration, directory services, authentication methods, security models. moving forward, right? Ideally, you can get an Azure free account. If you had a credit card, you can go to Azure and request for a free account, right? Maybe Dominic, if we have some time before the end of the class, maybe we can use somebody as an example and walk through how the person can get a free Azure account. So the account will be for one month. They give you $200 to deploy anything you want. You have to be careful of cost, but there are some services that you can use beyond the first 1 month that can last you up to a year. So I'm going to just walk through this, probably leave the last 30 minutes. I think we still have like an hour, 30 minutes remaining. Last 30 minutes for us to use it to go through that, if that's okay. Let me just move on with this. So core Azure architectural components, objective of this. So we are going to look at, okay, describe Azure regions, region pairs, sovereign regions. I know I explained this last week, but we have a lot of people that were not here last week, so I'm just going to go over it again. Availability zones, Azure data centers, Azure resources, resource groups, subscriptions, managing groups, describe the hierarchy of resource groups, subscription and managing groups. I'm going to describe all of this today. Regions. What are regions in Azure? So if you look at it, this is basically a map of the world, right? Microsoft have data centers all over the world. All over the world, right? They have what we call regions. They basically call it regions because that's how they merge two regions together. So for example, now, a big country like US have different data centers. Inside the different data centers, regions are basically data centers are inside regions. So how do they do it? Because they say, hey, the whole idea of computing is like, if networks are let me step back a little bit to explain some things. Networking, right? Networking. If a service is closer to you, it's faster. Think of it like this now. How many of us, most of us have used Wi-Fi before? If you're closer to the router, Wi-Fi router, of course it's faster. But the more you are moving out from where the modem is, the Wi-Fi router, it's the less fast it becomes. So in the whole idea of data services, the whole idea of networking is, if your service is closest to you, the more low latency you have, the lesser your latency. So that's why Microsoft is building data centers all around the world, closest to your location. Currently, I'm in the Netherlands. If I'm trying to open a business that lives in Netherlands and I'm trying to buy a service for Microsoft, I'm going to buy a server. I'm going to rent a server. No, I'm not buying, I'm renting now. Remember, I'm going to rent a server that will be in West Europe because that is where I'm located. So it will be closer to me. Right, closer to me. Moving forward a little bit. So the whole idea of region pairs is basically saying, Microsoft is saying, okay, I have data centers all over the world, right? I'm going to pay those data centers in the region. A region might have 2 or more data centers. The data center is as big as a football field. Last week I showed a picture. I'm going to look for that again. Bring forward again Microsoft's centers. It's an example of what a Microsoft data center looks like. I think I showed this. This is the one in Netherlands, right? Netherlands. So this is as big as a football field, and they have several thousands of this, or they have this all around the world. So imagine, so that's big of a football field. They say times 2 or thereabout. So the idea of region is about Microsoft is pairing data centers together. So they have 2 or 3 or more data centers in the same region. So it's basically paired together. That's what they have, right? So I want to go explain this a little bit more. So for example, now in West Europe, now you can have data centers in Netherlands, you can have data centers in Belgium, you can have data centers in Germany, all making the West Europe data center. You can have Germany West, the region. There's Germany West, there's Germany East. Let me use an example. Last week I used the first of Nigeria. So if Nigeria Microsoft wants to build a data center, a region in Nigeria, they can decide, okay, Nigeria is the 3 main geographic locations, that is East, West, North, and South, right? They can decide, okay, hey, let's have a data center in Lagos. So let's have another data center in in Eastern Nigeria. Maybe let me use, for example, which one is closest if you're going, let me use Asaba, for example. But let's have another one in Niger Delta. So all this can form the South, data center South. They can build something similar between the Northwest, Northeast. The whole idea of this is for redundancy, so that in case if there is a, let's say, let me use, for example, people, Niger Delta people, they went and seized one data center, they cut the power and everything goes down. It wouldn't make sense that me as a consumer of Microsoft that hosting my applications there, my application will be go down. No, Microsoft are building into that redundancy that say if a particular data center is not working, it can flow into another data center. So all these data centers are synced together and make up one particular region. They have over 60 plus regions representing over 140 countries. The idea of this is to provide flexibility and scale to reduce customer latency. Know that word, latency, all about latency. They say, hey, anything networking services, the closer to you, the more you enjoy. Think of it like this now. In the olden days when GSM networks came to Nigeria, if you live in an area that they don't have masts, you will not enjoy network. Recently, I was in Nigeria last year, and some areas have 5G, some areas don't have 5G. What do you have with that? If your area have 5G, you can buy the broadband and enjoy that service. Right? If your area don't have 5G, you cannot use 5G modem on it. So that's the whole idea. Latency. Latency is the word there. You can enjoy Microsoft. Your service, your application might be faster. Your service will be faster depending on region you are. Depending on how closer you are to Microsoft data center, the region. That's just what it's all about. Another thing I want to point out here is availability zones. I will gloss over it because when we are going to do Azure Administrator, which is more how to administer in Azure, which I believe will be after these classes. After this class is going to go more into what this is about. I'm just to glance over this basically. I believe this one is basically saying Microsoft is saying if data center A fails, I want to be able to start my services in data center B. So that means these three data centers will be connected together. So for example, now our Lagos data center will be connected to our Port Harcourt data center and to be connected to our Sabah data center. The idea of this is that if anything should happen, let's say, God forbid, water rise affect our Lagos data center, people's services that are hosted in Lagos data center is already synced with Port Harcourt and is already synced with Asaba. That's the idea of ability zone, linking them all together and presenting them as one region. Beyond that, that's what we call region pairs. Microsoft is building a robust infrastructure here, guys. So the idea is Microsoft saying, hey, okay, I want the difference. I want even those that are built Southern Nigeria and Northern Nigeria. I can make Northern Nigeria and Southern Nigeria pair with each other, to such that if anything should happen in Northern Nigeria, let the services for people that buy that extra service. It's not by default, you buy that extra service. I want your services to move automatically from this region to this region. And also, Microsoft is also saying, hey, okay, another thing. Let's say I have my customers in Northern Nigeria, I have my customers in Southern Nigeria. I'm a bank. I want everybody to enjoy the same service. So I can buy the service for region pairs in the sense that that same service is being linked to both Southern Nigeria and Northern Nigeria. That's what it's all about, right? Updates are rolled out. So, and also the beauty about it, if Microsoft is saying, if I want to update Southern Nigeria, I will make sure that I don't update Southern Nigeria, Northern Nigeria at the same time, that both of them goes down. No, I have to update them one by one, considering that people services can be paired. So there are some regions that are paired with each other. For example, if you look at what we have on the PowerPoint, you can see they're saying, sorry, moving too fast. You can see they're saying North Central and South. Sorry. North Central US and South Central US are paired together. East US and West US are paired together. West US 2 and West Central US 2 are paired together. East US 2 and Central US are paired together. These regions are paired together, right? Very good. The next thing I want to talk about Azure sovereign regions, US government services. The place to understand this, like people. We all know, let's say, for example, now, if you want to request for your, no, let me take it back. If the government needs compute, right? Our government needs compute, for example, to do NIN passports. in US, for example, now driving license, passports, all those services, even CIA, all those big organizations, all these guys, they use compute. So it won't make sense to be the same public cloud that we are using, Azure public cloud that we're using, that they are using. No. What they are going to use is Microsoft is build a particular section of Azure for their government agencies, for governments for sovereign nations. So those sovereign nations are not going to, because they don't want a situation whereby someone will, it wasn't done before, hack from this. No, they want their services isolated from around the world. They're going to build those services, those data centers for those regions, for those Microsoft services. So what they call it? They call it Azure sovereign regions. There's another one we're going to. China has their own, Azure China. We all know that Microsoft doesn't trust Azure. Doesn't trust China. China doesn't trust Microsoft. So what's happening here? Azure is saying, "Hey, I don't care about your choice between US and China. All I care about is business. I need to make money. So what I'm going to do? I'm going to build a data center for China regions, and I'm going to alert Chinese government to appoint who they want to manage it. And I will train those people and leave it to the Chinese government to manage." Right. So if you look at what it says, Microsoft is Chinese first foreign public cloud service provider in compliance with public government regulations. Azure China's features physically separated instance of Azure cloud services operated by 21 VANet. All data stays within China to ensure compliance. Right. We heard the whole saying, they say data is the new oil, right? Azure walkthrough. I want to go through this, but I will go through this now just to show you guys a sample of Azure portal. So from there, I can be pointing about all the services for you. Let me see. Where is it? Where is it? I opened it before. I'm going to go portal.azure.com. Right. This is basically Azure. So I'm going to sign in. I already have an account here. Signing in now. Sharing. So what I'm trying to go guys is Azure services. At the end of the class, when we go through how to get your own private Azure, you can actually learn more of this. You understand more of this more. You see how to create resources in Azure. So if I go back to my slide to show you what I mentioned virtual machines, I mentioned storage account. Yes, sorry, I didn't mention it. I said some of Azure resources are virtual machines, which is IaaS, storage account, which is PaaS, virtual network, which is IaaS again, app services, which is IaaS, SQL services, SQL database, which is PaaS, Azure Functions, which is PaaS also, platform as a service, remember. Sharing the screen now. Azure, just showing Azure. This is Azure portal. This is what Azure portal looks like, my people. This is what it looks like. If I go to click on all resources now, I'm going to see all resources I have in Azure. In this case now, this is my own personal Azure environment. This is all the things I have in my own Azure. This is that I created my own Azure environment. This is an example of a VM. This is a virtual machine in Azure, right? This is how you can restart this. So you can start it, you can capture it, you can delete it, you can open a mobile. It's actually a virtual machine in Azure. If you see, you look at this, it's telling you, hey, this virtual machine it was created this, and so it's showing that it's healthy. It's showing that it's showing you all the things in this virtual machine. It's showing you how to connect. You can, if you want to connect, it's showing the networking components of this virtual machine. And I think I want to show you guys quickly is the storage account. This is the example of a storage account. Storage account, I can browse the things I have in storage. Let me check what I have in. You can browse file containers. Oh, I have blobs in storage. I have downloads. I have PP. I have Terraform state file. Maybe down the line, maybe we can do things around Terraform. Let's see how it goes, right? Maybe before the year runs out, I have downloads. Do I have anything downloads? No, this folder is empty. I have boot diagnostics, right? For diagnostic, I have page blob there. I have PPP. I can't remember what I have inside PPP. I have Terraform state. I have Terraform state is basically for Terraform infrastructure as a code, but don't worry about this for one moment. This is a storage account. Again, I said this is a PaaS service. This is another story. This is Azure backup, which are not PaaS services. If I go further, I want to show you a VNet. This example of a VNet. A VNet. a virtual network. So before you create anything in Azure, you have to create it inside so before you create a VM in Azure, you need a VNet. You need a VNet. So inside a VNet, that's where you declare your IP addresses. Again, don't think too much about this. You have your when we create when you create your labs, when we create a lab, we're going to share the labs, and we expect you to review it over the week, come back and ask us questions, and we also hold you and do some of the labs. So if I go to settings and show you subnet, this is example of a subnet. In this case, I'm just using the default subnet. I'm not doing much config. Again, before you create anything in Azure, there's one thing you must create, which is a resource group. A resource group, like a basket, like a bag. Before you can create anything in Azure, you need a bag, you need a resource group where that thing will live on. Inside that resource group, it's where you create your resources. So for example, now I want to create a VM named John. Let me create a resource group named John. So if I go here, I can say John, I'll call it RG for resource group. What it's asking me, which subscription do I want to put this? I'm putting it inside here. Right. The next is asking me, okay, which region? Remember, I just talked about region. Where do I want to place it? Right. I can decide to place this in East US. I can decide in UK West. I can decide anywhere. These are all the regions available to me. South Africa West, the Central India, East Asia. I can choose any of this depending on me. I can go for East US. Right. I can go review, and I'm going to create this. So with this now, with this John I created now, I can go ahead and create a VM. A VM is what again? Where is John? John RG is not applying here. Okay, it's here, sorry. All right. With this now, I can say, okay, now I can create my resources. Create my resources by what? Creating, you can go ahead and create a full John's VM. So then, for example, if I want to choose a VM now, I can go ahead, okay, hey, this is John. This is the Windows Server VM. This is a Linux VM. I'm going to go for Linux. I'm just going to go to Linux and say create. So you can see now, one of the requirements, star, is basically you need to create a resource group. If I didn't create it before, I can actually come here and create a new one. So I can come here and create it and call it nonso RG, right? But I want to put inside John. I'm going to create inside John. So what am I doing here? I'm trying to create a VM. A VM is what? A resource. A resource must be inside a resource group. Please know the terms. And a VM is also an IaaS, infrastructure as a service. So I can come this and call this John VM. Again, I'm going to call, remember when I talk about availability zone, region, pairs, all those things. I can come here and say, hey, okay. Let me see. I'm just going to do default now because I'm going to delete this. Which zone? How many zones do I want? I can check and say, I don't want any zone. But I'm saying, hey, it must not be empty, right? Just because of one thing wants to protect me. I'm just going to choose only one zone, right? This I'm going to do this. Next thing, that's OS. Remember when we talk about the shared responsibility model, we are saying, okay, what exactly which you get to, because it's IaaS, you get to choose which OS you want, whether you want Linux, whether you want Windows, the flavor of Linux you want. See here, I can decide to go with a 24, Ubuntu 24, right? I can decide to go with a Windows Server, and because I decide to go with a Windows 11 Pro, right? I have the license to create a Windows 11 Pro. Can go with a free database server, free SQL license for 2029 server on Windows Server 2022. I can decide to do that. I can go with Alma Linux. I can go with Oracle Linux. I can go with any of these. There's more images. Sorry. Or I'm just going to choose Ubuntu 24. So which architecture I want to choose. This one is a bit complex, but I'm just going to explain it, right? x64 architectures, that's ARM architectures. For example, our Mac laptops, some of our Mac laptops are running on ARM architectures. Our iPhones are running on ARM architectures. That's it. I'm just going to leave it there. If you want to more research about it, you can go ahead and research between x64 architectures and ARM architectures, right? The next I'm going to go is this one, this option here, I'm going to leave this option. because I know we are going to explain it in detail when we're going to talk about billing, pricing, which will be next week. Next week, then third module of this will be next week. All right. Then the next thing I'm going to talk about size. In the cloud, better soup than money kill. You want 3 meats, you want 2 meats, you want 1 meat. It depends on costs. So, for example, now if I come here and choose Azure B1, you see this one B2. If I go with B2 B2 series with 4 gig RAM, choose vCPUs with 4 gig RAM, and it's going. If this server runs 247 for 1 month, I'm going to be charged $30.37. If it runs for one, if I choose this one, which is 1 CPU and 1 gig memory, for 1 full month, I'm going to charge approximately $8. If I go for more sizes now to show you, there are sizes that are more expensive. The price cost is still loading. So cost is still loading. Oh God. Okay. Wait, I'm going to close this. I don't want this to derail me. Yeah, let me just refresh the page. No, I don't know why this is happening. Probably I need to update my my browser, but let me see what it loads again so I can explain this bit and move a bit faster. Please, is there any questions so far? Okay, forget about questions. Is it making sense? Is it making sense? Your class is quiet. I'm going to start calling names.
Yes, yes, please. Yeah,
Just
with
calling
you.
names. Okay, all right. I don't know why this is happening, so I'm just quickly going to restart, update this while it's coming. In the meantime, I'll be explaining this with mouse. I'll bring it back. I'll bring back and walk through creating a VM. So remember, I said virtual machine, storage account, virtual networks, app services. All these are part of Azure resources, right? If I go to deeper, what the resource group, believe we can understand what the resource group is now, right? It's a container used to manage and resources. He aggregates resources in a single group, right? Remember, so these are the things they're saying now. Resources can exist in only one resource group. So for example, now, if I create a VM now inside a resource group called nonso, that VM cannot exist in another resource group called John. I can create John. I can create a resource group again called John and create a VM and name it nonso. It doesn't mean it's that same VM that is there. It is in my own. Do you understand what I mean? They are two separate things. Resources can exist in different regions. So what does this mean? A resource group that is created to be in East US can host the resources that are created to be in West US or Nigeria data center or West Europe. It's possible. Resources can be moved to different resource groups. What does it mean now? Hey, I wanted to create John's VM. I created it inside Nonso's resource group. After I make mistakes, I say, my God, I can decide to move that resource from Nonso's resource group into John's resource group. It's possible. So you can migrate. Applications can utilize multiple resource groups. I'm creating applications called a Zinangre class, right? You can decide that this application can have instances inside John resource group, inside Winner resource group, inside Regina's resource group. Is possible. Subscriptions. Subscriptions is what we call in Azure, basically call it a billing boundary. Leave that for grammar. Let me explain. Most of us have phone subscriptions. We have data subscriptions, right? So Azure too has its own subscription. Subscription, if you don't have a subscription, you cannot create a resource. Similar instance, if you don't have a subscription in your phone, you cannot probably make calls. You cannot probably browse, check your WhatsApp message because you don't have data subscription. So Microsoft is saying this guy, it's a billing boundary. It's a billing boundary because everything around subscription is built there. All the things you can create, delete, basically they are inside there. That's what it's about. So whether you can, if you create VMs inside subscription nonso, I'm going to, if I check for the cost of the subscription and checking on subscription, I'm going to see everything around cost. Everything you build will be built to that subscription. Access control. In Azure, that's what we call role-based access control, RBAC. If I can decide to give, let me say, for example, now, I think last week we have somebody from finance. I'm not exactly sure. If I decide to give the person access now, as a finance person, access to my subscription, that person can go, depending on the role I give that person can go and read more things, can go and delete things, can go and do what he needs to do, right? But I can decide to give that person, if I give that person access to my subscription, that person can only have access to that subscription. So, for example, now me and John have subscription. Just sorry, I'm using your name too much. Your name is very easy to call, right? Me and John, we have our own subscriptions. John decided to give Regina access to his subscription. Regina can only have access to John's subscription. He cannot have access to my subscription because I didn't give him access. So that's what the role access control boundary is all about. The next is management group. Management group is something very tricky for some people to understand. Now, so you mentioned subscription. What is management group again? Let me explain. Management group is simple. As a big company, right, a big organization, I like going to have multiple subscriptions, right? Have subscription. I already mentioned subscription is a billing boundary. I can have, okay, IT, I'm subscribing. Let me just ask, I'm subscribing $10,000 for you. Let me say retail, I'm subscribing $15,000 for you. Marketing, I'm subscribing $5,000 for you. You can have different subscriptions, right? So you have IT subscriptions, you have retail subscription, you have marketing subscriptions. But because it still falls under one company called Monso, I need a way to manage all of them. That's what management groups all about. Management groups helps you to manage multiple subscriptions. So in management groups, if you assign permissions on a management group level, let's say, for example, I decide to give Dominic access on the management group level, Dominic will have access in over every resource. Dominic will have access over every resource. But if I give Regina only access to her subscription, which is the marketing subscription, Regina will only have access to everything on marketing subscription. So please note, management group sits above subscriptions. I'm going to do the networking, walking you through how to create a VM just before the end of this class, right? The next thing I'm going to talk about is complete networking, objective domain. This will have been easier if I just create it. So I'm going to explain it. By the time I explain it, I'm going to run through, we're going to create a VM so we can all see. Azure Compute Services. So these are the different Azure Compute Services. We say virtual machine, app service, container apps, AKS, AVDs. These are the different Azure Compute Services. Compute, Microsoft saying, okay, these are the compute services we offer you. So these are the different services. What are we doing in this case? Virtual machines is an example of the one we're about to create now. Virtual machines, basically, I'm offering you compute. So as Babala where you be, offering you, I'm coming to come and rent a compute. You say, okay, I want a 1 gig. We saw an example of say, hey, a 1 gig, see 1 gig RAM with a 1 gig CPU. 1 gig RAM with a 1 vCPU is $7, approximately $8 every month, right? Very beautiful. If I move beyond this and now say, hey, if I'm moving this, okay, that's my VM. If I move beyond this now, I can say, okay, hey, that's my VM. If I go the next virtual machine scale set, we say, okay, hey, I'm starting with a 1 VM. If I'm starting with a 1 VM now, I'm starting my company with a 1 VM and 1 CPU. Tomorrow now, my company is growing. So I can decide to jump from 1 VM. I want it to move from 1 VM to 2 VMs to 3 VMs to 3 instances. That's virtual machine skill set. I think to make this easier to understand, so like don't be like the way the totals programming there and writing on the board. Let me just try to do it from the screen. So yeah, okay, this guy finally loads, which is good. So see that thing I was talking about, let's say better food for Azure and money maker. So if I decide to go for 2 vCPUs and 4 gig RAM, I'm going to pay $62 for a D series. For B series, it's actually cheaper. But B series is seen as a lower tier. It's not meant for workloads. It's not meant for production workloads. It's meant for lab test environments. So, but I want to go to leave all these ones. I'm going to go for the high-end ones, which are, let me say, the F series. Yeah, no, F series are also cheaper. F series are F series are cheaper also, but there's one that is much cheaper. I'm looking for, yeah, E series. The E series are optimized for databases. So, for example, see this E series now. If I go down to E16 V4 D4, this is no more supported, but this one is 4 CPU, 128 gig RAM. See how much you're going to pay in every month. 735. So again, better soup in Azure than money to them. But I'm going to go for the most cheapest one because I'm very stingy when it comes to my cloud resource. I'm going to go for this one, B1S, right? I don't want to waste money. B1S, which is basically this is going to cost me probably $4 to run for 247 in a month. God, it's out. Right? I'm going back to John VM, trying to create a resource again, create, select Ubuntu. So I'm going to call it John VM. All right. So I'm going to leave the default EastUS2, whatever. I'm just going to leave the default here. Zone 1, but I'm not going to touch this. I'm going to also leave this. I'm not going to, of course, you can change this. I'm going to leave it. But I'm not going to choose this one because I'm running quite low on cash in this. So I'm going to choose a cheaper one. So I'm going to go for, let me just go for this one. All right. Then the next thing is telling me authentication type. How do I want to log into my VM? Do I want to use an SSH key? Do I want to use a password? I'm just going to go for SSH key. I'm going to call it John admin. Right? I'm going to use a crazy password. Use a crazy password. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask me, it's going to ask me, hey, public ports. What are public ports? Okay. You are designing this VM now. You're creating this VM. How do you access it? So-called ports, port numbers. So it's part of the things I'm going to drop. For some of us that are not IT inclined, I will expect you to read up on this to understand what does also even mean by port. So it's in there, which port do I want to allow? Because it's a Linux VM, I'm going to use SSH port 22. No, I don't want to rush to review and create. I want to go into Bitback to explain some of the things that is happening there. I'm going to go a bit back to disk. Sorry, I jumped too much. So this was where we were before, right? This was where we were before. The next step is disk. I'm going to go to disk. What is disk? This is saying, hey, okay, what's the size of the OS disk? Size, memory. Sorry, size, disk size. Same way you want to buy a phone. Do you want to buy 64 gig, 128 gig, 256? So again, I'm being cheap here. I'm just going to go for 30 gig. Next thing asking me, what's the speed of the disk? It's saying, do I want premium? See, again, these things affect the cost of the overall VM. If I use premium SSD, saying best for production and performance sensitive workloads. If I use standard SSD, say, hey, for web servers, this is actually good, right? Dev test. For standard HDD, they say this is for backup. You shouldn't use this. So I'm just going to go for standard. They're asking me, local redundant. Do I want this just to be within one data center? Do I want it to replicate it across multiple data centers? I'm just going to leave it for the local redundant. I don't want to think too much about this for now. So I'm going to go next. Next is networking. Okay, you're creating a VM. You're creating a VM. For you to create a VM in Azure, you need a network. Just like saying you bought a phone. Nah, you add a SIM card. The network is how they're going to connect. So I'm going to use a network. I'm going to create a network. So I'm going to create a network, VNet, create a subnet. For this, I'm going to leave this default. Again, we're going to go deep into this in Azure or in Azure Administrator. This is not Azure Administrator class. This is basically general introduction, just to open up eyes about what Azure is all about. So I'm going to check this box, saying, hey, when you're deleting this VM, please delete all these resources because they cost money. Right? Do I want to enable load balancing? I just want to show you the different options because it's people supposed to know that anything you can customize your DM, you customize your resource in Azure. But most of the time, when you're customizing all this, it comes with money. It's just like most of us now, when you want to buy a phone now, okay, do you want a 1 terabyte? You want to buy a laptop now? You want a 1 terabyte? You want, I think the most customization you can do most times is the laptops, right? Let me just say for phones is only about disk, or screen size. But laptops, you can decide, okay, do you want a 2 terabyte hard disk? Do you want a memory? Do you want this CPU? Do you want i7? Do you want i9? Do you want i5? Which generation do you want? All those things you can do the same in Azure, right? Customize it. The more you customize, the more you add more features, the more it costs you. So another thing I can enable here is, I want to enable manage identity. We're going to talk more about manage identity in AZ 104, which is basically talking about administration. What is manage identity? Do I want to be able to log in with Entra? You ask, so what is Entra? We're going to talk this more in 104, but Entra, just like your Active Directory, right? I can just enable this. Manage identity is already checked. So if you see some features are linked to each other, by settling this, automatically picks this. So I want you guys to show you one beautiful thing also in Azure. See this enable shutdown. So Microsoft is saying, I know you might not have money. Microsoft wants you to get value in what you're creating. They're saying that, okay, you can decide to shut this VM down by 7 o'clock. If I shut this VM by 7 o'clock every day, 7 p.m. every day, what that means is that I'm not going to be charged. At the end of the month, I will not pay $7. I might pay $2. I might pay $3, depending on how much I used it. So I can decide to shut this down by 7 o'clock every morning. But I don't want to do this because I'm going to delete this. I don't want you to start creating all those things. I'm going to leave it. So patch operations, how updates work. So you're saying, okay, do you want to be the one to manually so there's a way for you to say automatic updates, but if it's Windows, automatic updates will be enabled. But it's Linux, say, hey, best workload availability, Azure orchestrated patching updates, or image defaults, right? I'm going to use Azure orchestrated. Say reboot if required. If you don't want it to reboot, you can say never to reboot. Say, for example, this is hosting my web server. I don't want my website to ever be down until when I want it to be down. Please never reboot. But I'm just going to choose reboot when required. Next thing is monitoring. Monitoring is about monitoring is where you choose, okay, hey, do you want to enable boot diagnostics? So what is this about? If this VM is not booting, how can I know that it's not booting? How can I know what's wrong with it? Where can I check logs? Enable boot diagnostics. You can enable alerts. You can configure an alert rule. Say, okay, if something should happen to this VM, send me a message. But I'm just going to cancel this. These are the various rules you can enable, but these are by default. I'm not going to check on this. Then next thing, you can enable health monitoring, right? You want to monitor a particular port. Let's say your website is running on this port, on port 443. You want to be sure that if port 443 is not available, issue escalates. I don't want to monitor any of this. I'm just going to leave it up like this. I'm going to over to next. Oh, I rushed too fast again. I want to go to advanced. Sorry. You're moving too fast, my friend. Come back to advanced. Advanced is saying I can decide to configure extensions. What are extensions? I can decide, okay, I want to install a particular extension in my VM. For example, now, if I click on extensions, let me see. If I want to install Azure Monitor extensions, I can select this one. If I want to install Azure AD basis login, I can install this one. I can configure all these ones, but I don't want to install all this. If I want my VM, when my VM comes up to create a folder, say, hey, hello, welcome to Nonso's VM, I can write the shell script and paste it there, paste it here. If I want to use Cloud Init, some of us, you can Google and see what Cloud Init is. Cloud Init is basically saying, so I want my VM to come up with some applications installed. I can put those things here. I can put those things I want to set up here. As simple as that. So host group, capacity reservation, proximity placement group. I want my VM to, so if I want 2 VMs, for example, I'm creating a web server, I'm creating a database. I want these two to be close to each other. Then I need to do proximity placement group to put 2 of them in one data center and close to each other. So they'll be faster. So the next thing I want to talk about is tags. Say, for example, now I'm creating this VM now for John. Maybe there are 20 Johns in my company. I want to say now John that did 8900 can say VM owner can now say belongs to John IT or John developer. Or I can put John's full name. Tags is basically how you say who owns what in Azure. You are tagging that resource. That helps know who owns what. So for example, now I can tell you, I was in Azure before Azure had this. How we used to know who owns what is that we maintain an Excel file and someone doesn't update it. How do we know who owns this VM, this thing that is named? What do? We shut it down. If somebody comes and complains, we say, oh, this VM belongs to your team. But that's a risky one. Why not tag it? That's why Microsoft introduced this tag. I'm telling you, this is not far back. It's just 2015, right? But Microsoft have introduced tagging now. Tagging helps you to tag your resources. Moving forward, I'm just going to go ahead and create this resource. This VM resource. I'm not saving this. Never. Don't save. Go ahead and create. It's creating now. This guys, any question? Any question? Am I doing magic? Do you understand? Okay, everybody is so quiet.
Yeah, I think they can post it on the chat. So we proceed further.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll proceed. I'll proceed. Yeah. Okay. The resource house is in progress. It hasn't fully created, but okay. Creating a VM now. It's created. So if you look at what it's created, the network interface, it's created the public IP address, it's created the network security group, it's creating network interface again, then it's done creating the VM now. Okay, this is taking a while. It's of course. In the meantime, let me see what we still have on the slides. Skill set. I mentioned skill set. VMware skill set. Okay, we are doing this exercise now. I think I'll talk a little bit about AVDs now. What is AVDs? AVDs is basically Azure Virtual Machine, Azure Virtual Desktop. So what are AVDs? You join a company and the company gives you a laptop, right? Company is a laptop, use the company laptop to work. But think about it like this now. Well, some of us work for companies all around the world. We also work for companies in England, we work for companies in Asia, or companies in Europe. Most of them don't send us laptops, right? What they do is they give us what we call VDIs, virtual desktops for us to work. Microsoft version of that is AVD. So they basically give you an AVD whereby you sign in with your username and password. When you sign in with username and password, you basically get the same environment you get as if it looks as if you're working from the company laptop. You can chat, you can do email, you can do everything, you can work perfectly from there. It's AVDs. Container services. What are container services? Basically, Microsoft. Hello, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm hearing one voice in the background. Like
yes, I can.
To talk.
No, I can.
Okay,
we can
right.
hear you.
Okay, all right. I'm pushing further. Container services are basically containers are lightweight services, right? Lightweight. They're basically used to deploy applications. You heard of Docker, containerized applications, right? So if you build if you build a container image, right? So for you to host it your laptop, to basically look at your laptop, you need an environment like this, like an Azure environment to create your containers. So the container services we have in Azure is Azure Container Instance. If you want to host a single instance of a container, if you want to create multiple applications, maybe microservices, you can use Azure Container Apps, you can use Azure Kubernetes Services. You can even use Azure AKS Automatic to do that. You can also use Azure App Services to do those ones. The next one is Azure Functions. Azure Functions is used for event-based code run. For example, last week I gave an example. When I was working in Lagos, I basically live in Ogudu and I work in Victoria Island. Some days I decide to drive. Some days, if I'm going to work, I basically check the map to see, okay, hey, should I go through Obalende or should I go through Osborne, right? Which one is better for me? Should I go through Barracks? Should I go to Osborne? So most times what I do when I check the map will say, hey, go through Osborne, go through Obalende, depending on the route, depending on the map. I say 6 minutes when you go through Osborne, 4 minutes when you go through Obalende. What if I build an Azure function, a code that runs, right? A code that does check Google Map at every morning before I leave my house by 6 o'clock, it sends me a text message, say, go through Osborne. Osborne is 15 minutes faster than when you go through this. If you just run and stop, Azure function, I can use Azure function to make it to run only that piece of code at 6 o'clock every time and give me an update before I leave the house. And I'm not going to be charged all through. I don't need to do anything. I just set a timer or a HTTP trigger and say, okay, you need to run at this particular time. Azure functions can do that for you. Comparing virtual machines. So comparing, let's say, Azure Compute options, virtual machines, the one we take environment is the cloud-based IaaS, basically virtual machines IaaS, right? Useful. What are they useful for? They are useful for lift and shift. You can choose which operating system, the complete packages for people that want to get their hands dirty. Virtual desktop is basically to give you a desktop experience. The fact that you open your AVD, you have your Outlook, you have your Teams, you have your Excel, you have your Word documents, you have the things complete in company software installed on it. That's what virtual desktop is all about. It's like your laptop, like a company giving you a laptop, containers lightweight for applications, for bundling applications and deploying them. That's what containers is all about. Azure App Services. So App Service is what? Platform as a service. Before I go to this, let me know whether the VM has finished creating so we can just quickly check it out. So yeah, the VM has finished created. I want to go to the resource. But before I go to the resource, this is the resource. You can see the tag, it's basically owner, John developer. I remember when I added this, see the time of creation. But before I try to connect to the resource, I want to show you guys something. I want to go to the resource group. This is the resource group. So this VM we created now came with how many resources? One, two, three, four, five, six resources. What do you notice? The VM, which is the VM virtual machine we know, then the IP address, the public IP address. The next thing is the network security group. The next one is the network interface. The next one is the disk, the OS disk. Then the next one is the virtual network. All these are required just to have your VM. As simple as that. Right? Going back into this VM, I'm just going to quickly log in. Let me see what I can do. Serial console. So this, just to show you guys, it's a let me see, serial console, serial console. Let's see. Yeah, it's preparing to console. I just want to show you. I don't want to start doing SSH. I just want to do serial console so all of us can see. Right. So this is the VM that we just created. It's actually logging in. John, I think the username I use is John admin, then the complex password. Yeah, I've logged into this VM now. So this is VM we created just a few minutes ago. If you log into this VM, you can see all the resources inside. If you do ls now, you can see because of D. If you do df -h, you can see the amount of this VM. We just created this VM just a few minutes ago. So this is Azure VM. I've just rented this service for a month now. They're going to charge me $8 if I leave this running for one full month. Okay. Back to Azure App Services. So Azure App Services, again, I said it was a platform as a service. Azure App Services, hey, Helen is very good developer. Helen doesn't want to run all this command. Helen is good she's good at writing React codes. She's good at developing applications. She needs a place to host her application. Helen can go and create an Azure App Service and just simply upload the application there. That's what Azure App Service is all about. Simple. Virtual network. Virtual network enables your resources to communicate. For example, now, like an example of the VM we create, this VM, we're able to create this VM that a virtual network. I can create a VM. This VM I created, and I can create another VM inside the same VM. This VM I created, John's VM can talk to Helen's VM I created within one VNet because there's a virtual network between each other. Network access ports. And that is, I don't want to, this guys will cover this guys is 104. This guy is a big, is 104. This guy is a bit complex too. I don't want to talk more into them, but I'm going to quickly switch into storage, just storage services. What are storage services? What are the storage tiers? What are the redundancy options? What are the options? How do you migrate? Right? I've shown you guys a storage account some minutes ago, but what's a storage services? Is a global service. Things to note about a storage account. You need a place to upload a file, you need a place to store something. In a place to upload something, in a place to store something, basically do it in a storage account. Right? You need a place. And one thing about storage account, please to note about storage account, the names are unique. If I want to create a storage account now, named Regina, and Regina has first of all rushed to go and create that storage account, I'll not be able to create it. So each storage account name has to be unique globally, right? It's also, it can make it to be available on internet worldwide. That means Regina can create a storage account now, and me and her will be sharing files through that storage account all over the internet. It's a way to make it private, but in the meantime, as big uncle, if for example, a big bank now will not leave their storage account open over the internet for people to be accessing it. They can decide to hide, can decide to make it private so it will be accessible for them. But in the meantime, a storage account is globally available. There are things to note about storage account. It's about redundancy. So for redundancy, it's talking about, okay, how if a region fails, I already mentioned that it's globally available. If I deploy it in East US, what happens? What happens if East US is not available? Does it mean that my storage account it will be down? Yes, if it depends on the redundancy you selected. If you select locally redundant storage, that means that storage will only be available in that particular region. If you go for zone redundant, it means that if you go local redundant, means it will be available in only one data center. If you go for zone redundant, it will be available only in that particular region. If I go for geo redundant, it means that, okay, it's going to be available in, for example, now in that region and another region. If I go for geo zone redundant, it's going to be available in 3 regions, right? That might be complex. How many of us have know the complex concept of, how many of us know what SLA is? Let me just, SLA, service level agreement, right? 9.99. So Microsoft is saying that, hey, if you choose LRS, the storage is available 99.99999 11 nines. The same if you choose ZRS, which is zone redundant, it's going to be available 9 into 12, 99.99 into 12, right? If you choose GRS, the same is going to be 9 into 16, 9.99 into 16. If you choose GZRS, it's going to be 999 into 16 times, right? Same thing with the other one. Someone asked me, why should I choose this? Why should I bother? Will this cost money? A region has never failed. It depends on your application availability requirement. For example, if I have requirements that my application are going to be used all over the world, I need to make sure that I choose regions GZRA so that that application will be available all over the world. It depends on your application requirements, right? It depends on what you're designing for. Are you designing for latency and all that? Then you consider all of that. Azure Storage Services. Inside Azure Storage Services, just like inside Azure Compute, there is AVD, there is Virtual Machine Skill Set, there is VM. Inside Azure Storage, there are things inside Azure Storage. There's Azure Blob. Azure Blob Storage is basically your container services. So for example, now, most of us download things from the internet. You are downloading that thing from a blob storage somewhere over the internet. The equivalent of that file where it's stored in Azure is called blob, right? It's called blob. Azure Disk is just, for example, now we just created a VM now, right? That VM, the operating system is stored in the disk. similar to all of us. If you are a hardware person like me, this is like the hard disk I changed from my laptop. This is the Azure disk you see is the one they have in Microsoft. So Azure can offer you Azure disk service. Is the service they offer. The next one is Azure Queue. Azure Queue is for message retrieval. It's for event. If you want, you can use it for queue up events. I don't know how to explain this, but think of it like, to look at it, for example, how many of us have okay, let me just how many. So most of us buy recharge cards through our phone, right? Most times when you buy a recharge card, right, you buy a recharge card, request to buy a recharge card, 2,000 naira recharge card, they debit you. Most times you receive a confirmation message, then after like 2 or 3 seconds, that's when you receive a text message that you so credit, you bought so credit. How are they doing that is through queues, through message queues. Azure storage has Azure queue, right? But it has a limit of 64 kilobytes. Azure files basically use the SMB protocol. Most of us have, if you work in organizations, most of us use file share. We mount file shares on our systems, we browse to file shares. That's what Azure Files is all about. The next one is Azure Tables. Azure Table is like your, what's that word I'm looking for? Azure Table is like your, it's like your Excel. Like say, like your mini database, your access, the access is not even only use access again, or like your mini database, you can use it to store things. It contains rows and columns. All these fall inside Azure storage services. Yeah, I got to call storage endpoints. I'm going to skip this because I know we're going to go more deep into it when we do 104. Access tiers, I'll just quickly mention this. So just access tiers in Azure storage is basically how Azure basically maintains the different sectors. So you have a storage account now, but so storage account, you access it daily. Some you access it every 30 days, some you access it every 60 days. So depending on how often you access it, that will define the tier it goes in. And each one, if it's hot, it means you access it all the time. It means that it's going to cost you more. If it's cool, you access it at least once every 30 days, it will be in cool session. It's going to cost you less than hot. If it's cold, it means you access it once every 90 days, let's say approximately 3 months. Then it's archived. Let's say you store historical data. For example, I know in Nigeria, the CBN mandated the banks to keep data at least 10 years. So it means that your transaction data that you might never access is stored in the bank for up to 10 years, right? So the bank might just move those old data into the archive tier to pay less money, right? Azure Migrate. I'm going to just mention this. Azure Migrate is basically used to build assessments for you to migrate your applications from on-premise to the cloud. So you see that as a tool. So most times whenever, as we go further, when we are doing interviews, they will ask you, hey, have you ever used Azure Migrate before? Whether yes or no, what it's all about, Azure Migrate, you can say no, but what Azure Migrate is the tool for you. So for example, now, I want to choose a name I've not used before. Leo reached out to me. Leo said, hey, no, so I want you to come and make assessment to my company. I want to know what I will need to move my resources from on-premise to the cloud. All I need to do is just to come and install Azure Migrate in his private cloud. It will assess his environment and tell me, okay, Leo has 8 VMs, 3 DBs, 8 VMs, 3 DBs, this and this. With Azure Migrate, I will be able to know what that resource has on premise, what is going to cost him to run into Azure, which resources I want it to match it. For example, I can decide, okay, his VMs on premise will be app services in Azure, or his VM on premise will be VMs in Azure. I can match all of them like that. Azure Data Box. Azure Data Box is something altogether. First, I've been in Azure 10 years plus now. I've never used this, but I can explain what it does. What does it do? You're a big organization. You want to migrate your data, but your data is so big, so you cannot be copying it over the internet. So you can do Azure Data Box, right? Because say Microsoft, hey, Microsoft, give me your this. Microsoft is going to do. They're going to send you a data box where you will use to store all your files. After you store all your files, you now ship it to them. You ship your data box, you encrypt it, they will encrypt it, give you encryption key, you decrypt it, you copy your files, you encrypt it back, and you ship it back to them. That is what it was about. file management options in Azure storage. You can use AZ Copy, you can use Storage Explorer, you can use Azure File Sync. These are different tools. I can show you an example of a Azure Storage Explorer. Storage Explorer, the window, the cloud-based option. I think I already showed you, but I just want to point it out again. The cloud-based option is basically this one. If I go to this, where is it again? Storage account. No, I don't have a storage account here. Going back to Texas, which is basically a storage account. This is a storage account. If I go to storage browser, this is what like a storage explorer looks like. You can install it locally on your system and basically browse to see different containers. You can browse file shares also. You can, this is a queue, this is a table. All of them form make up a storage account. So identity, access, and security. I think this is where we'll round up for today before we show example of how to get your this. I'll try to do this under 10 minutes, so please bear with me. Entra ID. Entra ID is basically Microsoft, what Microsoft uses for authentication. So for example, we also, when I tried, if you try to log into Office 365 now, you get prompts to enter your username and password. What does it do at the background? It authenticates with Entra. Entra is what your identity program, your Microsoft identity provider. Microsoft said this gives 100% SLA. They're saying this guy can never fail. It's global redundant. It never fails. They use it. You can use the authentication of your employees. You can use the authentication of your applications. You can use it to handle B2B, even B2C application management. That's what Entra is all about. So you can host your cloud-based services on Entra. For example, when builds our applications, you can decide to expose it to the internet and use Entra to authenticate who logs into it, right? You can use modern authentication protocol, things around OAuth, OAuth 2. You can use, Entra doesn't support KBROS and NTLM. If you want to use that, then you need to use the old ones, Microsoft AD. Authentication authorization. What's the difference between the two? This is one of my favorite interview questions I used to ask people. Say, hey, what's the difference between authentication and authorization? Authentication means, okay, hey, who are you? Who are you? Is authentication. What can you do is authorization. For example, now, if you come to my house and press my bell, I look at it, oh, it's Chugo. I know Chugo. Chugo can come into my, I've authenticated Chugo to come into my house. Chugo can sit in the sitting room. If Chugo does not have access to go and open my wife's spot now, right? No matter how close we are, he doesn't have access to come and open my wife's spot. That's authorization. He is authenticated to come into my house, but he's not authorized to go and open my wife's spot, right? Imagine that Helen invites me to her house. Next thing I'm going to do jump on her bed. I cannot jump on her bed. I cannot enter her bed because I'm not authorized. I'm not authorized to do that. So that's the difference between authentication and authorization. Authentication means who are you? Authorization means what can you do? So for example, you are your manager now. For example, you have authentication to request for leave. Your manager has authorization to approve that leave. Right? Is it clear? MFA, multi-factor authentication. I'm not going to explain this more. We all know two-factor authentication, getting you try to log into your phone, your bank app, you receive a text message. That's what MFA is about. Microsoft has offered its own MFA that uses app config and all that. That's pretty straightforward. B2B, business to business. Hey, my business, so he's trying to collaborate with Lazy's business. Lazy invites me as an Azure expert to come and work in our company business and say, okay, hey, because I'm inviting so let me invite so into my tenant. I can come into our tenant to make the changes I need to make to have access to do the changes. And the reason, the difference, we are going to go deep into this in 104. But the whole idea of this is that business doesn't have to create a separate account for me. I can use my same account as a vendor to come into the organization and do the work I need to do. B2C, when I decided, okay, hey, Lizzie built her app. Lizzie's not saying, this application, I want it to be open to the whole world, right? I want people to log in with their Facebook. I want to log in with their LinkedIn profile. Most of us have gone to some website will say log into your Gmail. That account is basically a B2C. It's basically business to customers. Their business, they're opening their business to customers. That's what Azure B2C is all about. Basically exposing your business to external services. So you can log in with your social networks, you can log in with your identity providers. That's what it's all about. Conditional access policies. This, I'm going to gloss over this because this is actually very fun. I remember when this came into power. What it's all about is basically saying, hey, I'm in Nigeria-based business, right? I want to control, even if you have username and password, I want to control who can log into my business. So, for example, now I work with United Bank for Africa, right? And they put me on, say, hey, so you need to come and connect. And they say, okay, you have a Bank of Africa saying, okay, we only allow people from Nigerian identity to connect from Nigeria. So tomorrow I do a show free. I went to party in Ghana. Of course, it's just a 45 minutes plane, flying flight. Couldn't come back. My flight was cancelled, and I decided to work from Ghana. I tried to log in. If they enable conditional access policy to say only the IP address must be from Nigeria, I'm going to get blocked. And your security is probably going to know, hey, why is this user connecting from Ghana? If I use VPN, right? If I use VPN and they see VPN, if you use all the VPN and set it to Nigeria, they will not notice. So with VPN, you can bypass this, but by default, with your default IP address, you're going to get blocked saying, okay, this location is not permitted. Same way, there's some resources you will try to access. They say, hey, you're not allowed to access this resource unless you are in the office. You need a VPN. So you can use conditional access policies to enforce it. Just know that's what it's all about. And of course, there are a million ways this can be configured, but I'm just giving you guys a summary of what it does. Role-based access control. I gave a glimpse of this before I say, okay, hey, what can you do? I have my subscription now. If I decide to give, let me say, for example, John joined my company. John is an intern. John joined my company. I want John to be able to see things I'm doing in Azure, things we have in Azure, but I don't want John to be able to make changes. I can decide to give John access, what we call reader access to. So John can come to Azure. John can see, but he cannot make changes. When I'm started trusting John more, I can decide, okay, John, I trust you more now. I'm going to give you contributor. Meaning John can make some changes. John can make some changes, but John cannot give another person access. There's owner rule. Owner rule is when John can actually start giving people access. And also beyond that access level, you can also decide what John has access to. So, for example, John is an IT intern. John doesn't need to have access to Regina's marketing subscription. So I'm going to give John only access to IT, only the part. So basically giving separation to what they need to do. That's what role-based access control. If you read the fine grain print, they basically say, hey, for fine grain access management, you segregate duties within team and grant only the amount of access users that they need to perform the job. So if you don't need, for example, now I have finance teams that take my Azure subscription to tell me what I'm going to pay, blah, blah, blah. They don't need to be able to create VMs now. They only need to see the cost, right? That's what it's all about. So you can give people access based on their needs, based on what they need to do in the environment. Zero trust. Zero trust is what zero trust aligns with also RBAC, meaning that, okay, hey, access, no, you don't give. So imagine, for example, now zero trust is an example that, hey, someone comes into your house, then they can enter any part of your house. There is no door, there is no lock, there is no key, so they can walk into any. So, but with Azure, you can decide, okay, despite the fact that you're inside the house, you have a reader rule, you don't have access to move beyond a certain level. You can only operate within a particular secluded condition. Defense in depth, what Azure offers about data application, compute, networking, perimeter, identity, and access, physical access. Some part of this, remember when we look at the shared access model, is on you. Some part of them is on Microsoft. Defender for Cloud is basically a SaaS solution that helps you with security. And just what I would put it, there a whole new certification level that goes into this, which is Azure Security AZ500. So, but just know that Defender for Cloud is Microsoft's SaaS solution to help you with the security of your Azure environment. Knowledge check. This is where we stop for this. Well, I'll hand over to Dominic. Maybe Dominic will pick someone who would do an example on how to get a free Azure subscription. So, and also John will tell us the next steps we'll go for the week. Dominic, over to you. I think someone has a question.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Take it up.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. That was a wonderful session there. Right there, I would say a very good delivery, right? So for how we still have one more slide, but I know because of time. Oh, sorry. I think I'm back.
Dominic, you're breaking. We're struggling to hear you. Maybe your
Yes.
network is having issues.
Yeah. So I think my network broke within a split seconds. I said I will just go through some of the slides and then move over to question and answer. And then I'm thinking if we could be putting out this lectures for Saturdays and Sundays, but I think Sunday will be, some of you might be resting and would not want to do stuff like this. So it's kind of like we're going to discuss this and then we'll create a group where everybody will have to chat and then get opinions about what our next class will look like. Should we be doing just Saturdays or Saturdays and Sundays, so that to hasten things up and also help you guys to get to the next day, because I mean, this is only Azure fundamentals. We still get to Azure administrator, we still get to Azure architect, we still get to go to the DevOps, still going to discuss security, still going to discuss AI. I mean, this is a very broad aspect here. So I'll just quickly discuss some of the slides here while I share my screen. Please. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Not
Okay.
yet. It's still loading. I can't see it yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Meanwhile, if you have any questions, share it on the chat, then we can respond to it.
Okay, so can you all see my screen?
Not yet. For those of you who weren't here in the last Saturday event, I've shared a recording of the last event, previous event, and that's a prerequisite to this model discussed today by Nonso. So the model of today is Azure Architecture and Services. So there are prerequisite modules before that. I shared the recording already, the chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Okay, great. Just quickly go over to the top slide here, and this is what we are going to discuss for today. We are going to discuss learning.
No, sorry. Let's move this to next week. We just have 27 minutes. Okay, so sorry, Dominic. I would say let's move this to next week. So let's just use this for questions. If anybody has questions, because you can't finish this within 30 minutes, if I'm not doubt. I'm just thinking. I don't know, guys, but let's put the vote. Should we continue today? Sunday, Vincent, Win, do you want us to continue today, or can shift to next week so we'll not be like overburdening everybody? That's what I'm asking. If you ask me, I'll say next week we'd handle it. So we're already saying, yeah, this is 2 hours plus now. So I don't know. Helen, anybody, Favor, Lizzie, John, Win, anything? Should he go ahead, or can we shift it to next week?
Please speak up so that let's
Please,
vote.
can we do it next week? Because some of us, our head is spinning right now. I can speak for myself. My head is spinning.
Okay. 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 I'll say next week. Well, what we're going to do next week, please let our 6 o'clock be our 6 o'clock. So it will really make sense. We start 6 o'clock. We'll use the first 30 minutes to go through the steps of getting a subscription. Then Dominic can fly in and conclude this AZ900. Is it good?
Yeah, that's fine.
fine.
Okay. Also, any questions? Any questions? Anything you like want us to talk about? Any questions? Anything you don't understand?
Please feel free to ask questions. I know you guys have questions, and some of you are trying to simulate what you just learned today. So if you have questions, feel free to come in with your questions, what you don't understand, because I know when Nonso was trying to come up, was working on the demo, I've been seeing some comments in the chat saying that this looks more intense. I mean, you will still get to the part where you still learn how to write scripts. Don't be scared, you will get to that part as well. Also, if like we discussed last week, we talk about if you want to become a data scientist, you want to become a cloud engineer, you want to become a DevOps engineer, you want to become a security engineer or an AI engineer, this is the path for you right now. So regardless of whatever you study in school, what your major is in school, this is the path for you right now. Learning the cloud basis fundamentals and concepts help you to strive in those fields. In as much as we're going to start asking, giving you like take on to do like work on yourself and then come back and ask questions. I think that will also go for next week as well. I've set up like different links where you use the learn.microsoft.com, and then there's a sandbox for you to be able to test run all of this and see how it works. So, and then for your questions, please feel free to ask the question, because I mean, this is what I would love to also speak with you at this point in time.
I think Favor is typing. Favor, are you typing? Okay, Leo has a question. Leo raised it. Hi, Leo. Can you please go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Noso, for that brilliant section. Okay, mine is just because he has said a lot today. So maybe if we could get the recording on time, and so that we can actually practice what he has done today, so that in the next class we can just flow along with it. So I want to also ask if we're also creating the account, so let's know, so that we want to actually practice what he has taught us today. We'll go with the recordings and look at everything again, so that when we come before the next class, we're up to speed. Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's on me. I didn't do that at that time. So I think can we get a lab or assignment so we can come next week? We have more experience to ask more questions. Favor correctly. That's correctly. We're going to drop the learn.microsoft.com particular modules for all these 2 modules we've handled. So you can go ahead and practice it. It will be on this chat. And I believe Dominic will also email it to you guys also. So in the meantime, we are going to paste this. So thank you for the feedback. Yeah, thank you. We'll paste it on this chat also, but you also get it by email. Dominic, right? I'm saying the right thing. You email it to them, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Somebody posted a question, Vincent.
Okay, let me see Vincent's question. Then please, my question is 3 majors you said. Are you going to separate them next week in the conversation? Sorry, Vincent, I'm not understanding. Are you saying the 2 modules? No, we will paste the 2 modules we have done last week and this week. You're going to paste them in the chat. For next week on, I'm going to leave it. Okay, say if I was saying a group would be more efficient. Maybe a WhatsApp group. I don't have your numbers though. So what do we say? I don't have your numbers. Should we think? How do we handle it first? I don't know.
I think they can join. We have an Azure group. They can join. I can send the link. They can join it. That's where they have a bigger group of
yeah, but
individuals.
they might be lost in the Azure group. That's just my concern. The Azure group, they might
Exactly,
be lost in it because there are a lot of various discussions going there. So even if they join that one, it will make sense for them to join like a smaller group of just only the people who's in this class. So it will be easier. At least they can tag no. So tag. Okay, you know what? Let me see what I can quickly create a group. I think let me see and just share it. Yeah, everybody joins. Anybody that wants to join. Let me see. How do they even do it? So I'm getting old. Group. New group. I'll just say Dominic, I'm going to add you. I'm going to add you by default. So then I'm going to share the link to the group here. So
So my suggestion again should be why we create a smaller group, they should also have join the Azure Nigeria group where because a lot of stuff. Again, I want to also talk about different Microsoft what's it coming up in time to come. Yeah, so Microsoft programs that comes up twice in a year. Microsoft builds where you can join in the Cloud Skill Challenge and get a free voucher. Now, this voucher would enable you to also participate in writing a professional certification and get acknowledged. The essence of this is to also get like a very good job within the cloud space in Azure. And then also this will also help you to like speed up within the cloud environment as a whole. So just keep in mind, we'll be dropping links like this in the group. And then because I know sometimes some of you, after learning all of this, you want to also like asking, how do we get certified? Getting the is a 900 is a very good start if you want to get certification of that. I think there are some cloud skill challenge where you participate and get it all for free. So I'll be posting that link as well. So bear in mind.
Okay. He's talking about paths. Okay, because I mentioned AZ security, AZ from security. So yes, we are going to talk about. I think how we'll do next week. Yeah, before we all start. Dominic will walk us through the different parts, right? How everything starts with AZ900 and goes with that to data scientists, DevOps engineers, product engineer. I think forgotten her name. She mentioned it last week. Sorry, we missed that this week. We're going to share the career path. After that, then we can now go further into completing the AZ900. Then we'll also show how to get a subscription and all that. But in the meantime, I've pasted the link for the group, and also I will share the links for the training, on the group, on this chat also, and also on the group, and also share the Microsoft Learn on the group. Thank you, Vincent, for your question. All right. So also, I also begin to chat. So far, I can see 5 people. 2, 3, 4, 5 people. So if you want to join more and ask question, if you see Dinero is actually Dominic. I'm going to add Hugo, and then Nonso is my name. Whether it's Nonso, I don't know the lambda, but it's Nonso, so we are all good. Thank you. If you have any follow-up question during the week, just paste it there. I promise to answer, maybe not immediately, or before the day runs out, because my day is quite very fun. But before the day runs out, I'll respond to any of your questions. Before that particular day runs out, to be precise, yeah, I'll respond. Okay. All right. I'm not sure whether I have any other questions. Thank you all. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, everyone. Please, next week, let's make it 6 o'clock, please. 6 o'clock Nigerian time. My friend from New Zealand, I don't know what's 5 a.m. your time, 7 o'clock Dutch time. Let's just make it like that. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. The recording will be posted here. You can come back on Teams to watch it. Thanks.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Thank you. Thank you.